Okay, we're recording. Mute myself also.
How is everyone? I hope well. Let's see. Okay, so we have the Gemarra's position. We have firstly the Mishnah, which says that somebody who's a sholeach yad in a pikadon is machlokes Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, and Rabbi Akiva, and subsequent and Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai says Yeloke b'choser v'yaser, that he is punished with that which is less choser, which is less v'yaser, and that which is more, which seems to say that what he has to pay back is always the highest value, and we are not interested more or less in the timeline. Beis Hillel says that it's b'shas hotzah. He pays k'shas hotzah at the time of the removal of its exit, and the Gemarra debates what k'shas hotzah means. So the Gemarra the Gemarra quotes, the first thing the Gemarra does is quote Rabbi, and Rabbi says the question of somebody who stole a barrel of wine from his friend, of course, Mechavrei. At the beginning it was worth a zuz, and then it became more expensive. And he splits the case into two separate cases. One is where there was an action done to the barrel to destroy the value, in which case he says that he pays the larger amount if he does an action to destroy the value. And that's the case of where he says Meikara Shavya Zuz, Hashta Shavya Arba Zuz, where it became more valuable. And so he splits the case to where there was an action done by the Ganef, and if there was an action done by the Ganef at the time of the value of the 4 zuz, he pays 4 zuz. If there was no action done, if the barrel broke by itself, he pays 1 zuz. He pays the amount that he pays the amount that he stole. He pays the amount of the value of the barrel at the time he stole it. And the Gemarra quotes a Mishnah which says Kol hagazlonim mishalmin b'shas hagzela. All the gazlonim, all people who steal, pay at the time of the theft. So the first question we're going back, I know, to Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, but last week we had a lively conversation about Rabba's intention. And let's see if we can see clearly, or at least if I could see clearly, Rabba's intention. And hopefully everybody will see it clearly. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, why would the Gemarra quote this memra of Rabba? Why would the Gemarra quote this memra? What connection would it have, apparently, in the mind of the Gemarra to the Mishnah? That's the first question. Let's ask, and of course anybody is welcome to jump in at any moment. So, what connection does this memra of Rabba have to do with the Mishnah in your minds?
the fact pattern is similar, meaning that there's been an appreciation of value or a lessening of value.
A change in value, good. A change in value. And since the Mishnah mentions there's a change in value, if not directly, but obliquely, by saying, Yiloke b'choser u'v'yeser, Beis Shammai says, that Beis Shammai says that you pay the lesser and the greater, the more and the more and the less. So if there's a more and a less, obviously there's a change in value. But what else do you have to infer?
Sholeach Yad, he has a contractual obligation and he's violating it, and in that sense, he's stealing something, possibly.
So the question is Rava and Rabba's statement a continuum of the idea of the Mishnah? Is it a reflection back on the Mishnah? How do we see the statement that was made, Mr. Reinstein?
I think Gemarra at this point is assuming that Shlichus Yad is a type of Gzela. And therefore, Rabbi's statement has to be consistent with the Mishnah.
So Rabbi's statement has to be consistent, or at least a derivation. At least it has to be some kind of a similar platform. It wouldn't, I don't think it would make sense to say that the Mishnah is talking about one case, and Rabbi comes, and the Gemarra comes and inserts Rabbi into the story, and Rabbi has nothing to do with them. It's an independent case, has nothing to do with the Mishnah. That being said, the Mishnah's case is not the case of Rabbi because
Rabbi is not necessarily talking about Shlichus Yad, maybe.
Well, say it the other way. You always do the backward flip.
It's safer.
Well, I don't know. When I dive front first. I'm not so good turning around. The Mishnah says Hasholeach Yad b'Pikadon. The Mishnah says you're Sholeach Yad. Clear. There's no. The Mishnah doesn't say Hagonev. The Mishnah doesn't say you're Haganev. The Mishnah says you're Sholeach Yad. Comes Rabbi and says, by the way, somebody who steals a barrel from his friend, if it goes up in value and he didn't do anything about it, he pays the original price. And if it goes up in value and he was the cause of the loss, he was the cause of the destruction, he pays the higher price.
We said that the problem with that would be that it would turn out that if the price went up, he would hold like Beit Shammai. And how does he hold like Beit Shammai?
But okay, 1 second. That's what you know already, but don't go there. The question, because Rabbi doesn't talk about it if the price goes down. Rabbi just talks about if the price goes up. And Beit Shammai talks about potentially both ways, because Loken bechoser uveyeser, you go both ways, whether it's devalued. And that's not clear, by the way, how to interpret the Mishnah and Beit Shammai's words of choser and yeser. What does it mean that you get punished with the lesser? If you think about the language of the Mishnah, independent of anything else, what does it mean? Yiloke b'choser uveyeser.
I would assume that if it was worth 4 and now it went down to 1, you would force him to pay 4.
Okay, so is that if you were writing the Mishnah, is that the language you would use?
No.
No. What language would you use if you were writing the Mishnah? If Beit Shammai says you pay the top price all the time, and even if it's a knas, even if it's a penalty, you pay the top price all the time. So right. What would you write in the Mishnah as Beit Shammai's opinion?
Pay the top price. That's what.
Pay the top price. You pay the top. What does it mean? You look at the choser uve yeser. You pay you get punished in the loss and in the appreciation, in the more and in the lessening. You get punished.
There is a difference because you're getting to that number 4 in a different way. In other words, you're getting one might be because it went up itself, and therefore you owe that. The other one might be there's
Say
something.
straight. If you want to tell you want to say you pay the higher price, right? Rabbi Shammai says you always pay the higher price.
I'll tell you, because yilakeh is a very strong term, and it means that we're punishing him, and therefore.
So you use the word yilakeh in the highest price. You
No,
punish him with the highest price. I agree. I understand he wants to tell him about the local.
Chiddush is that even if it went down, so that's a very strong statement. That if it was worth 4, you would normally say, okay, pay the 4. I mean, if it was worth, you're 4 and went down to 1, you would say, well, okay, take back the 1. No, we're punishing you. So it's more of a chiddush to say it that way. I think maybe.
I don't know. I wouldn't be so oblique. I would say Beis Shammai says always pay the higher price, no matter when it occurs. Always pay the higher price. Okay, so now comes the Gemarra and says we want to understand the machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. What is the machlokas? What is the argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? So Rabbi comes and makes his pronouncement, and he leaves the scene. And then the Gemarra goes to the next situation and says, what's the machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? My kashas hotzah. What does it mean kashas hotzah? Mem gimel at the bottom. If you say that the value is when the object is no longer able to be repaid, uvemai, what is the Gemarra talking about? What is the Mishnah talking about? If there is a lessening of the value, it's an impossible situation. Because if there's a lessening of the value when the object is no longer able to be repaid, and we have a rule which was already stated in the Gemarra that all thieves pay at the time of the theft. So what does that mean that all thieves pay? What's the implication? What's the meaning that all thieves pay at the time of the theft? What does that mean?
If anything happens while it's out of the house of the owner, it doesn't affect what they have to pay back. That's a rabbi.
That's true, but say it halachically.
The price of what he has to pay is set by the time that he steals it.
That's the definition. Say it halachically.
It leaves the rishus of the
Good.
owner.
Go ahead.
That's the price.
Good.
That's the price.
Good.
Set.
Good.
Finished.
The value that he has to repay is the value that is existing at the time that the transfer of ownership, the transfer of rishus, the transfer of something happened, and at that moment, that's where the evaluation takes place. That's a halachic prescription. If there's a shinoi rishus, if there's a shinoi something, if there's a change in something, that's where you owe the money. That's where the money gets owed. Good. So the Gemarra says, if it gets less later on, and we know that all people pay at that moment. So when it gets less, when the decrease in value happens, and the gzela is done, in whose house does it become less?
In the Ganav's house.
In the Ganav's house. It becomes less in the Ganav's house. And would we ever think that if it becomes less in the Ganav's house, he pays less money? Elomai. What happens if the other way around now? It goes up. He stole it at 1 and it goes up to 4. And the price of the 1 to the 4 is in where does it become 4?
In the Ganav's house.
In the Ganav's house. So it's the Ibeyeser. And if it's at 4, says the Gemarra, and it's in the Ganav's house, and he pays 4. So if the case that they're arguing about is the more, yes, says the Gemarra, that's Beis Shammai. So there's no machlokas. if the value is 4, and Beis Shammai says you pay the greater value, you paid 4. So the idea that it goes out of the world at 4 is no good. Ela pshita, says the Gemarra. So simply, it's not the time that the object is removed from the world, but it's the time that the object is removed from the house of the owner. What does that mean? So if the object is removed from the house of the owner, and it's worth 1 at the time that it's removed from the house of the owner, and now it's worth 4 when it's either destroyed.
Unless you say that when it's stolen by the Gazlan, he becomes a new owner.
Good. So that's good. The Gazlan does in which case,
if it goes up in value in his home, he's a new owner of higher value.
So therefore, he pays 1. At the time of the theft, according to Beis Hillel, he would pay 1. Okay, so if it goes up in value, similar to Rabbi's statement, if you don't do anything, you pay 1 consistently all the way along. But Rabbi says if it goes up in value, you pay 4. So Beis Hillel says if it goes up in value, how much do you pay? You pay 1. Okay. So who does Rabbi seem to be agreeing with in his statement? Are we okay till now, Mr. Einstein, or
No,
we're okay? Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Again, at this stage, again, the Gemarra seems to say that Shlichus Yad and Gazlonis are exactly the same. The halacha should be the same in both cases.
Apparently, the similarity holds, and when you're a Sholeach Yad, you become a Ganef. And Rabbi then says, so what would be? Rabbi would hold you pay 4. And who holds you pay 4? Beis Shammai holds you pay 4. Says the Gemarra, Lema Rabba Dharma Beis Shammai. Top of Mem Gimel Amid Beis, second line. Lema Rabba Dharma Beis Shammai. So what that leads you to the conclusion that Rabba holds like Beis Shammai.
But that's only if it goes up. If it goes down, no, that's only if it goes down. No, wait. They only agree on one side.
That's right. They're only arguing in one side. Look at Rashi. Ela pshita b'shas hotzami beis balim. B'shas hagzela. When it goes out of the house of the owner, b'shas that is determined to be the time of the theft, when the object leaves the house of the owner. Ubeyesa pligi. And the argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is where there is an increase in value. What does it mean? The Ka'amri Beis Shammai, because Beis Shammai would then say, Im hukra, if it goes up in value, it was 1 at the time of the theft and it becomes 4, is Yilok Elishalim Kashas Hotzas Min Ha'olam. He pays at the time of the destruction 4. Because it was worth 4 when it was no longer able to be repaid. When it was stolen, how much was it worth? 1. And at the end of the time, it was worth 4. So Beis Shammai says you pay the 4. That's what he says. Beis Hillel. And what then does Beis Hillel say? Amri, beis ba'abalim. You pay like as the amount of it when it went out of the Beis Balim, which is how much? 1. So if, and this is a big if you hold that Rabbah says that Shlichus Yad and stealing is the same, and the object goes up in value according to Rabbah, when, by the way, let's be clear, when does it go up in value? And when do you pay the 4 according to Rabbah? When? Exclusively. When? Rabbah has conditions, right? In his halacha.
When the Ganef has it.
When
No.
the Ganef breaks it, doesn't break on its own.
Exactly. When the Ganef breaks it. So Rabbah said his halacha as it rises, when the Ganef breaks it, it's worth 4. What happens if the Ganav doesn't break it? It continues, according to Rabbi, to be worth 1. So apparently, the Mishnah is only looking to talk about a machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, where it went from 1 to 4, and according to, in the light of Rabbah, only where he broke it. Only where he broke it. Because if the Mishnah would be talking about where he didn't break it, what would he pay?
1.
So if he paid 1, who would Rabbah be agreeing with?
Beis Shammai.
If he paid 1, who would Rabbah be agreeing with?
Beis Hillel.
Beis Hillel. So everything is neat and dandy. That's what Tosfos says. Yes, the im tomar tap Tosfos luki plugtayu. Yes, let them the machlokas in the Mishnah be beitbar memela, that it would where it was broken by itself. And then Rabba ke Beis Hillel, and then Rabba comes out like Beis Hillel, and then you have no problems, right? Says Tosfos the imkain lo haba pligi be Beis Shammai. He says, but in that point, Beis Shammai wouldn't argue if the fellow didn't do anything, and it was stolen at 1, and it remains 1. Beis Shammai will tell you it's 1 also. So there's not going to be there's no chiddush and there's no argument. So you can't use that side of the coin. Tosfos says, because the only side that creates the tension is the side where it was increased in value and where the owner had the damages done himself, where the shomer did the damage himself. In that case, it's worth, the payment is 4 according to Rabbah, and the payment is 4 according to Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel says the payment would be 1, because Beis Hillel says kishas hagzela, kishas hotzah. And if hotzah means hotzah mi beis baalim, hotzah means you take it out of the owner's house. How much does Beis Hillel say you pay when you steal it and it was worth 1? How much do you pay? 1. So if you pay 1, then you don't come out like Rabbah. Comes out that Rabbah and Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are agreeing, and Beis Hillel is not the case. Says the Gemarra, and that can't be.
I don't understand. Why then does the Mishnah use the word yalakeh? There is no knas. If you read it like that, then, and the whole machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is whether it's hotzah mi beis balim or hotzah min ha'olam, then the word knas yalakeh doesn't fit in.
No, that's not the machlokes isn't in hotzah mi beis.
That's what Rashi says. Rashi says that each one of them has a different point of time that they're looking at. Beis Hillel is looking at it b'shas, Haitzam
right, mi beis balim,
balim, and Beis Shammai is Haitzam mi beis
hotzah min ha'olam.
Ha'olam. So they're looking at it. They're establishing the value at different points in time. So where's the knas? There's no knas here.
I'll tell you, because you have a Mishnah to tell you the Gazlanim pay by
perfect.
So the Beis Shammai is giving their machmir specifically so they can punish him.
Of course, because the rule is that all the Gazlanim pay b'shas kishas hagzela. And here Beis Shammai comes and tells you, no, this is not the shas hagzela. This is the time it's going out of the world, which is the higher evaluation. And therefore, it's a knas. Because the Gemarra holds fast to the proclamation and to the understanding, Kol hagazlanim mishalmim k'shas hagzela. That appears to be an anchor point. Yes, that appears to be an anchor point. So much so that when Rabbah said his halacha, that if you break it, you pay at the time of the breaking, that idea that a ganav pays at the time of the geneva was so powerful that the Gemarra had to create an artificial time of the geneva, because that is a universal anchor. Ganovim pay at the time of the geneva. That's what the Mishnah says. So, and Rabbi who comes and says, if he broke it afterwards, yes, because I asked the original question, you want to know the time of Geneva? Tell me when he's over the Isser. Then I'll tell you the time of the Geneva. He's over the Isser when he removed it from the house of the Baalim. How much was it worth when he removed it from the house of the Baalim? 1 zuz. Now it's worth 4 zuz. So Rabbi has to kvetch, he has to knetch, he has to push into that idea that he has to create what he calls a new time of the Gezela. When is the time? When is the new time of the Gezela? The time that he broke the barrel.
It
When it
broke.
can't be returned.
He drank it.
And he drank it, he broke it, whatever. So he did something with his 2 hands, with his power. He did something to destroy the barrel, and that's now the time of the Gezela. So how do you? I mean, that's an esoteric question. How do you view that as the time of the Gezela? So Mr. Reinstein says that's the time when the diminished value can no longer be returned. How much did he not what he stole, but how much did he damage? How much did he damage the owner? He damaged the owner 4 zuz. Because if the owner would have had the barrel at that time of the return of the barrel, it would have been worth 4 zuz. So now the owner doesn't have the barrel at the time of the return because it's broken. So how much damage did he do to him? He did 4 zuz damage. So that becomes effectively the Shas HaGzela. It's not so simple.
It's not, because it contradicts the Mishnah directly.
Exactly. It not only contradicts the Mishnah, that's not the words that they're dealing with. They're not telling you about the idea of the damage to the owner. They're telling you about the Shas HaGzela, the time of the theft. So you want to interpret the time of the theft is the time when the owner is damaged. Okay. I don't see that we have much latitude not to do that. Says the Gemarra. So in light of that idea, that what? That Rabbi is aligning with Beis Shammai and opposing Beis Hillel. So the Gemarra comes now and tells you that is an untenable halachic position, because the halacha was set like Beis Hillel eons ago, and for Rabbi to come and have a halacha that apparently aligns with the opinion of Beis Shammai and not Beis Hillel is an untenable halacha. Okay. Says the Gemarra, Amalach Rabba. So Rabbi is going to tell you about his untenable position. V'yeser kula alma lo pligi. When the value goes up, nobody is arguing. What does that mean?
Everyone says,
What does it mean when Rabbi comes and answers for himself and says, "Listen, beyeser kula alma lo pligi."
whether it's destroyed or
here's where last week it didn't go through, or at least I couldn't get it to go through. Either way,
whether it's destroyed or whether he just returns it, he still has to pay for it. That's what it means.
I would think when it goes down, if it goes down, nobody's arguing.
So when you'll be Rabbi, you'll change your word. But until then, you'll listen to what he says.
Okay.
I think what he's saying is the following. He's saying until now, the premise of the entire discussion is that Shlichus Yad and Gezela are exactly the same halacha. Until now, that was the discussion, and that created this problem for me, Rabbi, because now I'm holding like Beis Shammai. So I'm going to change the terms of the discussion. And indeed, everybody does agree that if it goes up in value, Shlichus Yad is Gezela. There's no question about that. But there is, for the reason he's about to say, there is a discussion as to whether when it goes down, Shlichus Yad is Gezela or not. So, and by changing the terms of the conversation, changing the premise from what it was until now, he's able at this point to say, I can hold like Beis Hillel also. So when he says "B'yeser kuli alma lo pligi," because everybody holds like me. Everybody agrees that if the value goes up from 1 to 4, he's going to pay 4. You pay the greater of the value. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, and that's because shlichus yad, when the value goes up, doesn't in fact turn out to be like Gezela. But there's going to be a problem in the case where it goes down in value, because now there's going to be a machlokes whether in fact there is Gezela or not.
So I can't wrap my head around that, what you just said. I'm sorry to say. I can't see how you shift the platform of the argument when Rabbi himself doesn't say that. Rabbi says he doesn't talk about shlichus yad becoming gezela or not becoming gezela. He says v'yesek kula alma lo pligi. In where there is an increase in value, Beis Hillel, kula alma means Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai agree. What do they agree? What do they agree? First of all, when is the point of evaluation here, according to Beis Hillel?
So it's when it gets destroyed.
So the point of valuation is when it gets destroyed. Good. How much is it worth when it gets destroyed?
So if it went up in value, it's 4. If it went down in value, it's 1.
Okay. So if it goes up in value, it's 4. And Beis Shammai, that's Beis Hillel's position. And Beis Shammai says in their position, how much is it worth?
If it goes from 1 to 4, everybody agrees that it.
Everybody agrees it's 4.
It's 4.
So, but the platform remains the same.
At this point, because the platform remains the same.
The platform remains the same. There is no shift in the platform. Everybody is talking about the same game, and shlichus yad and gezela. The moment of the shlichus yad is the moment of the gezela.
Correct.
Same platform. Okay. So now the other side. Ki pligi. When do Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai disagree with each other? B'chaser. They disagree with each other when there's a decrease in the value of the object. So what would happen where there's a decrease in the value of the object? If Beis Hillel, let's see what Rashi says. Let's see what Rashi says. Ki pligi b'chaser. When do they argue? Where the value decreases. V'ka amri, Beis Hillel. Then the position of Beis Hillel would be kashas hotzah min ha'olam. It's not. Right. We're no longer at the Beis Baalim, because in the Beis Baalim we wound up with the other plunter. So now we go back to the original idea in the Gemarra, which was kashas hotzah min ha'olam. You pay from the time of the destruction. So Rashi's laying it out for you. Uka'amri Beis Hillel kashas hotzah min ha'olam. Okay.
So now it's worth 1.
So now it's worth 1.
Right.
Udika kashalach. And then you ask the question, Kol ha'gazlonim mishalmim kashas ha'gzela. If it's all the ganovim pay at the time of the gzela, b'gzela mamish. If this was a case of real gzela, where a person would remove the object from the premises, then
Rabbi talks about in the Gemarra.
The moment of the removal of the object from the premise, that's the Shas HaGzela. So at that moment, according to Beis Hillel, yes, at that moment, what was the value?
Price freezes.
4.
No, if it went down in value.
Yeah, so
and he stole it when it went down in value.
So when he stole it from the house, it was 4, and now it's worth 1, right?
Okay, so if it's the Shas HaGzela, he would pay 4.
Yeah.
Right? The Gezela Me'akara Hachinami, where he went ahead and he stole it from the beginning, and that was a theft. Whatever the valuation is at the time of the Gezela, everybody holds Kol HaGazlanim Mishalmim Kshas HaGzela. And then it would be worth whatever it was at the moment of the Gezela. That's talking about a thief.
A real thief.
A real thief.
Right.
That's what Rashi says. Gezela mamish, a real thief. The God from Meikara, because he stole it from the beginning. It was removed from the house of the owner from the beginning. Hochinami, that's so be it. That's the case.
And is that why Rabbi starts? I hate to go backwards, as you know, but
yeah,
that why Rabbi starts the Gemarra, or the Gemarra starts with Rabbi using the word the gazo.
Yes. So now he says, but in our case, Abel Hacha, in our case, which is our case, the Mishnah, Abel Hacha, in our case, Shlichus Yad, he's talking about it, Abel Hacha, the Behetera Osaliyade, because at the moment of the heter, of the moment that the property entered the reshus of the shomer, it came to the reshus of the shomer behetera. Umishum shlichus yad kamachayev eslei, and because of shlichus yad, he's arguing he's becoming now over, not because of gezela. He's becoming not Rabbah, the Mishnah. The Mishnah is telling. So what is the Mishnah telling you? The Mishnah is telling you, according to Rashi, umishum shlichus yad kamachayev eslei. He's now becoming. Why is the fellow in the Mishnah over? Because of shlichus yad. He abused the object that he took into his position.
Is he calling that the point of Gzela?
No Gzela. There's no Gzela.
According to Beis Hillel, I believe what Rashi is saying is that according to Beis Hillel, the point shlichus yad can be Gzela, but that is exactly the machlokes. When does that occur? According to Beis Shammai, every shlichus yad is Gzela from the moment of shlichus yad. Therefore, the halacha of shlichus yad and Gzela are exactly the same, and they have to mimic each other. According to Beis Hillel, the shlichus yad becomes a Gzela, but only at the time of chisar and kiss. Therefore, when it goes from one to four,
don't go there, because that's the next piece in the Gemara. That's not this piece. Chisar and kiss. We're not talking about the devaluation of the object. We're not talking about the devaluation of the object. You can't.
It's better if he doesn't, because then.
Let me. Don't put the next case into this case. This case says, and as Rashi says, Baha Pligi, this is what they're arguing about. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are arguing about this. That since it came into his hand behetera, since it came into his hand permissibly, and there was a case of shlichus yad, whatever the case of shlichus yad means, whatever it means he took the object and he was a sholeach yad. There's no definition. Yes, we're not defining. All we're saying is as a sholeach yad. So, and the value was decreased. So there's a halacha in the Torah that's a new halacha that's called the halacha of sholeach yad, which is not the halacha of a ganef. It's a separate halacha. It's a halacha of a sholeach yad. And in the halacha of a sholeach yad, Beis Hillel would say that the time of the valuation is the time that he was sholeach yad.
Right.
No. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai would say the time of valuation is when he's a sholeach yad. Beis Hillel would say, you have to read with the next line. What are they arguing about? So the Gemara explains that Beis Hillel holds, this is the one, it is the same case, that Beis Hillel holds that the time of valuation in the case of shlichus yad is at the moment of chisar and kiss, which is as Rashi is explaining, is the time of gzela.
But what does chisar and kiss mean? What does that mean, chisar and kiss?
Went down.
No, what is chisar? No,
went down in value.
1 second.
When it caused the loss of value to the Baal.
No.
Caused or just
no,
not the balance.
No.
The destruction of the Pekadon.
Good.
The Chisar and Kiss is the destruction of the Pekadon because you can't have a time lag between the Shlichus Yad and the destruction.
Good. Chisar and Kiss is the idea that not that he didn't he cause? When did he cause a destruction to the value of the owner in a ganef? When does he cause the loss of value?
He drank it. He broke it.
When he removes it.
Exactly. When he removes it. When he removes the object, he causes the owner his loss.
It's not his
That's a ganef. But
what about a secondary loss? What about if then not only he removed it, but then the value?
He's responsible for he's then responsible for the value of the object. He then is responsible for the value of the object, and that's not called chesaron kis. Chesaron kis is that you take the object itself and you devalue the object itself. You take from a barrel of wine a quart. So you took from the barrel and you went ahead and devalued that object itself. The machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is that if what is called shlichus yad, Beis Hillel holds shlichus yad is only when you do the devaluation of the object itself, not when you steal it, when you devalue it. So if you have an object and you
market
use
forces
it,
don't count.
What?
The market forces don't count.
No,
only the actual devaluation of the object.
A sholeach yad means that hand has to create the devaluation. That's what a sholeach. He extends his hand. With that hand, he has to create the devaluation. Beis Hillel holds that if that hand didn't devalue the object, he was not a sholeach yad. He was not over the isser. Avada, he's not a ganef. Because if you're not a sholeach yad, nobody holds you're a ganef. So so long as he didn't go ahead and devalue that object, he was not a sholeach yad whatsoever.
What does he do with the pasuk?
What?
What does he do? How does he define the pasuk then?
There's a case where when you devalue the object, you become a sholeach yad.
That's how he defines the pasuk.
That's what the definition of shlichus yad is. When and Beis Shammai says, you are a sholeach yad the moment you took that object in your hand, and in the bottom Mishnah on the page, he says even when you thought about it, not even took it. The bottom Mishnah on the page says even when he thought about being a ganef, he's a sholeach yad. When he thought about devaluing the object, he's a sholeach yad. But that we'll get to when we get to that Mishnah. So Beis Shammai says that if you don't have to devalue the object, all you have to do is at this point do an action that shows you your intention is to go ahead and devalue the object. You moved the object, you moved it from the place that it was in, and you were going to go spill it. You didn't spill it yet, you didn't take off anything yet. You just took the object and you moved it. So Beis Shammai says, you don't need chesaron kis in order to be a sholeach yad. What you need is intent. In the movement of the object, you need intent. If there was intent in the movement of the object, you're a sholeach yad. If you're a sholeach yad, then the Mishnah comes into effect. Ha-sholeach yad b'pikadon. Beis Shammai says, once you do the action that shows the intent to go ahead and devalue the object, you're a sholeach yad. You're b'chosar v'yeser. Then whatever the object was valued at its highest point, you pay that valuation. You didn't have to devalue the object. You didn't have to use the object. You didn't have to touch the object. That's Beis Shammai's definition of shlichus yad. Beis Hillel says, if you aren't going to cause chesaron kis, if you don't do something to the object that causes, you took the barrel and you moved it to the next room, and you stood on top of the barrel because you put on top of a shelf a book you wanted to get, and that's the barrel you stood on to get the book. Did you cause a chesaron kis? Did you cause a devaluation of the barrel? And don't tell me you weakened the sides of the barrel because maybe one day it'll break. The answer is no. Leave that alone. But he took the barrel and he used the barrel. He clearly used the barrel in order to accomplish something not for the owner and not for the barrel, as we had before. And that is a case where the halacha is, according to Beis Hillel, potter. So therefore, what? So therefore,
the shlichus yad, which is the equivalent of the gzela, only occurs at the moment when he destroys the object. There's no act of gzela before then, and consequently, if it goes from 4 to 1, he has to pay 1. If it goes from 1 to 4, he has to pay 4, not because he's paying the higher of the values, but because the only time that's relevant to Beis Hillel is when he destroys the object in the shlichus yad, because that is the only moment of gzela.
That's right. That becomes the moment of Gezela. So now, so now look back now at the Mishnah. Hasholeach yad bepikadon. Hasholeach yad bepikadon. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are not talking about the same case. They're not talking about the same event that happened.
Beis Hillel is much more limited.
Exactly, because Beis Shammai says you're a sholeach yad the minute you move that object in order to, again here in our part, the minute you intended to steal that object, you're a sholeach yad. Anything that happens after that moment, anything that happens, if it decreased in value, from the moment that you were a sholeach yad, you're chayiv.
But not if it broke by itself.
But that's...
Why does he eliminate that situation?
Well, the question is
One second. He eliminates that because by definition, the idea of a sholeach yad means there has to have a hand that does an action, and itbar memela is not that action.
So let me ask.
If it broke by itself, that's not that action.
Why?
You need, in order to be a sholeach yad, you have to be sholeach yad. According to Beis Shammai, this is enough. You extend the hand, you move the barrel, you were going to use it, gegangen, you're a sholeach yad. According to Beis Hillel, you can extend the hand, you can move the object, you could use the object. But if you didn't decrease the value of the object, you're not a sholeach yad.
Give it back and
So right? But there has to be this. There has to be the movement. So itbar memela, which is its own case, doesn't have now. Again, according to Beis Shammai, itbar memela could be in shlichus yad if you thought about that you wanted to use the object and it broke by itself. According to Beis Shammai, it could be that it's a sholeach yad, but that's the next Mishnah. That's not this Mishnah. According to this Mishnah, the idea of a sholeach yad means you have to create the action that violates the shmira that you did.
Who's the one who
Let's assume that you moved it. According to Beis Shammai, at that point in time, you're a sholeach yad. And 2 days later, the barrel breaks by itself. Why shouldn't he be responsible for the increase in the value of the barrel?
You are?
Yes, and therefore my question
you
is...
are.
Shammai says you are.
Beis Shammai says you are.
No,
100%.
I don't think so.
Read the words in the Gemarra. The Gemarra says specifically in the same lines that when it broke, it's in his reshut. Okay, so my question is.
Wait a second. Who's reshus?
Read Beit Shammai Savar Shlichat Yad Eina Tzurchachasem B'chi Chaser B'Shuta Didei Chaser. It's now it became his reshut. So my question is, now we're really separating Gazlan from Shlichut Yad totally. So what is why are we mixing in? Why are we mixing Rabbi?
That's correct. At this moment, we're not separating it so distinctly, because why? Why aren't we Why aren't we separating it so distinctly?
Yeah, I don't know why not.
You're not separating it because there's still a Maisa Gneva. Even if there's no decrease in value at this point, there's still a Maisa Gneva. You move the barrel with the intention of using it. You move the barrel with the intention of using it. with the intention of decreasing the value. You move the barrel. So there is a Maisa
He
Gneva.
says you don't even need chisaron.
You don't need chisaron kiss, but you
That's what
need a
he said
Maisa Gneva. You need to do it. And here, up till now, a sholeach yad you can't sit like this and think, you know what? That's a very, very nice barrel of wine. I'd like to have a quart. That's not a sholeach yad according to our understanding of shlichus yad throughout the whole mesechta that we're learning.
Right.
A sholeach yad has to have an action. The question is, what are the results of the action? Do the results of the action need to cause a decrease in the value of the object, or the results of the action don't need to do anything? Just you have the intention in the action of decreasing the value of taking something of decreasing the value of the object.
And what
Going back to our
what if your intention was not to decrease the value of it?
Good. Going back to our proverbial vase, where you take the vase and you put it on the table, and you go ahead and you fill it with water, and you put in flowers, and you take out the flowers, and you wash the vase, and it's sparkling clean. You use whatever that is that you put in the dishwasher, and it's glistening clean. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So according to Beis Hillel, you're not a sholeach yad. According to Beis Shammai,
You are.
Are you a sholeach yad?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not.
That seems to define shlichus.
Okay, so let's say, according to Beis Shammai, you took the object and you used it for yourself. You're a sholeach yad, even if there was no chisaron kiss.
Correct.
So you're a sholeach yad if you use the vase, even if it's in perfect condition. When you give it back, you were a sholeach yad. You give back the vase. You give back the vase, so the owner comes and he says, "Where's my vase?" You say, "Here's your vase." The transaction is finished. The problem becomes where the vase breaks.
Yeah, I saw somewhere.
So if the vase breaks and you have it on the table and you use it according to Beis Shammai, you're a sholeach yad, and therefore whatever the value is at the moment that you return it the highest value, you pay the highest value. Beis Hillel says, if there was no chisaron kiss, you were not a sholeach yad. What does that mean? You were not a sholeach yad. It means you can go to Beis Din and you could take a Sefer Torah and you could take a shvuah. I was not a sholeach yad. I was not a sholeach yad. I didn't violate shlichus yad according to Beis Hillel because I did not cause a chisaron kiss. I did not cause any devaluation in the object.
Rabbi, I read somewhere about a shoel shalomi das.
Yeah, that's later on.
But isn't that similar?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. The Gemarra is that's the next layer of complexity. The Gemarra is going to then say, so what is that fellow who used the vase? Then the Gemarra is going to say, what is that person who used the vase? Is it mutter? Can you use the vase?
No.
Okay. So instinctually you say no. But you have to have a halachic reason to say no. You have to have a halachic basis to say no. So the Gemarra is going to come to that idea and open up our minds on that idea. But up till now, up till this point, the idea of chisaron kiss means that again, as Rashi says, Beis Hillel holds, they're arguing bechoser, where the devaluation was in the object. And if there was no chisaron kiss, so Beis Hillel says you're not a sholeach yad. If you're not a sholeach yad, and the object gets devalued, and the object is broken, and you were not a sholeach yad, how much do you pay?
If nothing happened to it?
No, broke.
No, obviously it was in the end it was lost. It couldn't be replaced.
It was when it was originally given to you.
Exactly. A guy, you exactly. When you give an object to somebody and it's worth $1, and the object is destroyed in a way that the person wasn't responsible for it, how much does he pay you back? A shamachinam. You give a shamachinam an object that's worth $10, and the shamachinam is potter from Geneva and Aveda. If it's stolen or lost, he's potter. The object, there was a break-in his house, that object they went and stole, exactly that object they stole, and that's missing. the Shomachinam is Potter. Yes? Of course, he has to take a shvua that he wasn't a sholeach yad, all the things that has to take a shvua. So Shomrim, he doesn't have the object, it's not in his reshus, he didn't use it, all the things, he has to take all the shvuas. But if he says, I don't want to pay, and I'm going to take a shvua, and he wasn't a sholeach yad, in a normal case of a destruction of the object that isn't responsible, that he's not responsible for, how much does he pay?
Nothing. No.
The other way.
Yeah.
The other way. He
is responsible for it.
Sorry. He was
but he wasn't a shaleach yad.
But he wasn't a shaleach yad. Sorry. He was responsible for it. He wasn't a shaleach yad. He says, look, how much does he pay?
$10 at the time when he got it.
Silver went up during the time that he was a shomer, and the cup is now worth $60. There was a tremendous surge in the silver market. You give a guy this.
But before this Mishnah, we always learned that if a person is a shaleach yad, he's chayiv for everything, including an ones. Is that correct?
Correct. Still.
So right.
Still.
No. Because
yes.
Once he qualifies as a sholeach yad.
Once you are a sholeach yad, you're chayiv and everything.
That's what we're defining.
The question is, when do you become a sholeach? The Mishnah now is talking about the Gemarra, not the Mishnah. The Gemarra is trying.
And he still pays. He just pays less. He just pays a different amount.
Right. The Gemarra is trying to define for you, for us, what is here? The Gemara is defining a sholeach that a sholeach yad pays or is chayiv anonsim, no question.
I'm thinking of something that's clearly chisaron. He's watching the guy's lawnmower, and he uses the lawnmower, and the lawnmower has 1,000 uses, and he used it, so now it's less. It's less value.
Not clear. It's not a clear case.
It's not.
Let's leave.
I think the point is we don't define sholeach yad biologically.
But
you define shleach yad in the Gemarra here. In the Gemarra here, you've defined shlichus yad in terms of the decrease in the value of the object. Once you cause a decrease in the value of the object, you're a sholeach yad according to Beis Hillel. Before you do that, according to Beis Hillel, you're not a sholeach yad. Beis Shammai, as always, sets the bar higher. It's easier, according to Beis Shammai, it's always easier to violate. 90%. It's always easier to violate. How do you violate? By moving the object with the intention of decreasing the value of it. Right now.
That even if I, as a shomer chinam, can you also be a sholeach yad?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just
Any shomer could be a sholeach yad.
Can I go back to Saul's question for a second?
Yes,
I think that people are kind of dancing around this. According to Beis Shammai, and this is also ties in with what Tosfos said. According to Beis Shammai, he is a sholeach yad from the moment that he took it into his possession with the intent of using it. At that point in time, he should be chayiv ba'onsim, right? Because a shleach yad, even if he was a shomer chinon who's a shleach yad, is chayiv ba'onsim. Why at that point? This is what Saul was asking. Later on, 2 days later, the roof falls in and breaks the vase. Why is he not chayiv at that point?
That's where I made the mistake. He is chayiv, just not the same amount.
So
why isn't he?
He's always going to be.
Of course he's chayiv.
Right.
He's going to be chayiv. He's going to certainly be chayiv. But why isn't he chayiv? Why is he not chayiv for a value of 4 at that point? Since he's chayiv b'yonsin, and I think the answer is what was just said. That is, he is chayiv b'yonsin. What they're discussing is what the correct value is in this case. That is, even though in the case of Gzela, let me put them side by side. If he stole it, and then if he stole it and then he
Gets stolen again.
And it broke by itself. So then he would only have to pay the value now. He certainly has to pay the value, but he only has to pay the original value. He doesn't have to pay. This is what Rabbi said. He doesn't have to pay the higher value for from 1 to 4. In the case of Shlichus Yad, even though so now he took it. He moved it. He said, "I'm going to use it," and then an onus happens. He's certainly chayiv b'yonsim because that's the halacha of a shleach yad. However, since just as in the case of a regular gzela, you're not chayiv at the higher value when the onus happens later on. Beis Shammai, I believe, would say here also that if he took it with the intent of using it, and then it broke by itself, he clearly has to pay the value, but the original value, not the value when it becomes 4. If on the other hand, 3 days later he takes that barrel and drinks from it, then he's like any other gazlan. At that point, since he even though he was a gazlan at the time when he was shaleach yad, he now has to pay the higher of the 2 values.
But if you look at the Tosfos, yes?
Yeah.
So Tosfos poses the question. He understands that there is a way of lining up Rabbah and Beis Hillel in the Mishnah, which is to say that we're talking about Rabbah's case not where there was an action done with the hand, but where it broke by itself, it bar memela. Yes?
And then he says that Beis Shammai would have to agree with that. That Beis Shammai would agree.
Exactly.
But in the case of Mamela,
no,
have to
he's
pay
not
the
saying
higher
that Beis Shammai would agree with that. He's saying no, because Beis Shammai is not talking about a ganef. Beis Shammai is talking about a shaleach yad. Rabbi is talking about a ganef. Beis Shammai is talking about a shaleach yad. It's going to be that last phrase in the Tosfos is not referring to Rabbah in terms of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. It's referring to the Mishnah. He's saying that the Im came if the Mishnah's platform was Rabbah's second case, not the case where he broke it, but the case where it by itself broke. If that was the case, and it broke by itself, there would then be no argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai.
And everybody would agree that he does not pay the higher price.
And everybody would agree he doesn't pay the higher price. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Everybody would agree he doesn't pay the higher price. So both Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. But then there's no machlokus in the Mishnah.
Right. No.
But that can't be. That there's no machlokus in the Mishnah because there's a machlokus in the Mishnah.
Right. So
it can't be the case where it's less, where it's broke by itself. It can't be. It has to be the case where there was an active breaking that causes the controversy between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai.
Right.
How does that?
The question that Saul asked was, but why shouldn't we have a controversy there? Why shouldn't the fact that a sholeach yad, and according to Beis Shammai, he agrees that at the moment that he took it, whether or not there's a hisaron kiss, at that moment he's a shleach yad. Since a sholeach yad is chayiv b'yonsin, why shouldn't he be chayiv for 4, even when it breaks by itself? And I think the answer to that question is yes, he is chayiv, but even Beis Shammai would agree that he's only chayiv at the original value, not at the value of 4, because that was the moment of gzeil.
Okay. Why do they use the term loke?
Loke means it means
no. Because he's not talking about that case. What they're asking is on the other side that the Mishnah is not talking about. The Mishnah what they're asking about is the side of the Itbar Mamela, where it broke by itself, and then they're talking about how Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai would argue the value, would evaluate the value if it's Itbar Mamela. And they say then that there would be no argument in Beis Hillel. But the Mishnah is not talking about that case. Right. The Mishnah is talking about the case of where there was an increase in value and where he did it biyadayim. And Rabbah says 4. And Rabbah then comes out and agrees with Beis Shammai, who also says 4. And that creates the conundrum that doesn't allow us to hold that Rabbah holds like Beis Shammai, and we have to change the understanding of the Mishnah. That's what the issue is.
Right.
Right. So again, where the Gemarra is, where we've gotten to so far is that the Gemarra seems to be saying is what Rabbi, the way he defends himself. He's saying my principle is absolutely correct, indisputable in the case of Gzela. The question is, in the case of Shlichus Yad, when does that Gzela occur? According to Beis Shammai, it occurred at the moment when he took it. According to Beis Hillel, it only occurred when he destroyed it, or when there was a Chisar and Kiss. So so there's only one point of valuation for Beis Hillel, and according to Beis Shammai, there's 2 points of valuation.
Yes, exactly. There's a continuum of valuation where he pays the highest amount. Correct. That's right. So, but who does Rabbi hold according to in this setup?
Looks like Shammai.
Teugnish. It's no good. It can't be. It's untenable. Okay. So now we'll go to the next time. We'll go to the next layer, and then we'll talk about Shlichus Yad, Ashol Shalom Midas, and all those things, and hopefully we'll get to at least the 2 dots, God willing, next time. Good?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you.